Well, I appreciate you guys coming and listening. My name is Ryan Condron, CEO of Titan, and we're going to talk super geeky, low-level hash rate routing, mining, power grid stuff. So, yeah, let's wake up. Here we go. I'm going to try to put as much energy in as I can. I'm tired too. I think I was out till like 2 or 3 last night. So, someone has a Red Bull for me somewhere. Someone want to give me a Red Bull? All right, let's do this. All right. A little bit about myself. I got into mining in late 2012. My buddy Kyle came to me and told me about this thing called Bitcoin. I was very skeptical at first. I started reading a lot about it, getting involved in the forums, and quickly just fell in love with the technology. We wrote a lot of early profitability calculators that turned into a site called Coin Wars. If you've been around mining for a little bit and altcoins, you might be familiar, maybe not. We turned that into about 80 different mining pools in 2013, 14, and 15, wrote cloud mining software, hardware comparison sites, all sorts of fun stuff. We launched Titan about 3 years ago now, focused on mining stability, optimization, and decentralization through software. Today, we're going to be talking about renewable energy, renewable resources, and how Bitcoin mining relates to it. It's been kind of a hot topic in the news ever since Elon Musk decided to talk about how Bitcoin mining was bad, necessarily for the energy usage aspect. But we see a lot of renewable resources coming online. We see more solar, we see more wind. As the price of it goes down and down, we see more of it coming online. So the question is too much electricity a problem? Okay? Now, I'm from Southern California, and if anyone's familiar with Southern California, I think one guy, sweet, we made it, all right. Okay, we have Palm Springs, right? Number 2 in the country for solar production and renewable resources, right? California has an initiative to be completely carbon neutral by 2045. It's very ambitious, okay? Last year, we had 95% of our power grid being produced by renewable electricity for 4 seconds. But that's, I mean, it was a win, and like it hit the press, press releases all over the place. 4 seconds, we had 95% of our grid there. It's a very, very difficult thing to balance a grid with renewable energy, okay? So how this works is you have a building or a house that has solar panels on it. Now, during the day, those solar panels are producing electricity, okay? DC current goes through the inverter, you get AC either going to your building that's going to supply you with electricity, or it goes back to the power grid if you're not using it. The key thing that I want to drive in everyone's head right now is that load always has to equal demand. It has to be balanced, okay? Electricity is not this thing that you just create and hope someone picks it up and uses it. You only create it when someone's using it. Okay? So we have these things called load following. We have a lot of different aspects here. But let's dive into this a little bit. So we're just going to take a house in Palm Springs that's generating electricity during the day. If you're running your air conditioning, you're using electricity. If you're not home, the meter's going to run what they say backwards. You're essentially earning cash with the electric company. Okay? So it's actually running backwards. And then at night, when you're not producing electricity, you're going to use that credit with the electric company, and it's going to run forward. Okay? So this idea that you're putting electricity back on the grid. Now what happens, in California, we have over 1 million homes with solar right now, and they're pushing more and more and more. What if we have 10 million homes, right? And what if it just keeps climbing and climbing and climbing? What happens when you have too many homes or businesses putting electricity back on the grid because people aren't using electricity, okay? Now you have this issue where you need batteries. Okay, so everyone's saying they're going to pair batteries with the solar production. Now, this is very, very hard to do in a large amount. So I believe in Australia right now, they have one of the largest battery arrays in the world, put together by a small company called Tesla. And it's a good use for balancing the grid in a local system. Okay? So batteries can take electricity off the grid and put electricity back on the grid very, very quickly. So battery arrays are very good. The problem is it's very expensive and it's short-term storage, okay? So remember that, short-term storage, we're trying to create balance on the grid. Why is balance so important? Balance is very important because, once again, load has to equal production, okay? Now, what happens if you produce too much electricity on a grid? Well, here in America, we have 60 hertz, okay? That's our target number. So when it goes through transformers and we're creating voltage out of it, if you go over 60 hertz, you get too high of a voltage and you start destroying stuff. So people have to disconnect from the grid if it goes over 60 hertz. If it goes under 60 hertz, then stuff is underpowered. Once again, you start breaking stuff, generation, and people have to disconnect from the grid. So we have about a 0.05 hertz tolerance somewhere in there for putting too much electricity on the grid or getting electricity off the grid. Now in California, we started putting so much solar and so much wind on the grid that we weren't using it all, and we got into a situation where we actually had to pay Arizona to get electricity off of our grid. So we were paying a state to take our electricity so that we wouldn't have blackouts, because once again, if you put too much electricity onto a grid, you're gonna have blackouts. If you have not enough electricity on the grid, you're gonna have blackouts. So we'll do rolling blackouts sometime. Like last August, we actually had this very same issue where we had to do rolling blackouts to balance the grid, okay? Now this problem is just gonna keep getting worse and worse. Over the past 10 years, solar has dropped almost 90% in cost. So now we're seeing more and more renewables coming on the market, more on the grid, which is a good thing. This is what we want. We want renewable resources, we want renewable energy for more than 4 seconds. So if there is only a product, if there was only an industry that just had an incredible thirst for electricity, dang, if we only knew of something that could actually take up 100% of the load 100% of the time, now we could actually build a renewable resources grid for 100% capacity, and we don't have to do what's called load following. Now, load following is this idea where you have nuclear energy, you have gas, you have coal, an energy producer that can actually ramp up or ramp down depending on load, okay? So we're actually following the load. If the load goes up or down, we try to follow production up or down, okay? Now, this is really cool. In California, we have about 2/3 of our grid is actually produced inside the state for this ramp up, ramp down, but 30%, a third of our grid is still having to be purchased from other states in order for this ramp up, ramp down period, because we can't build renewables for 100% load because we're gonna blow out our grid. And we're gonna have to pay someone to take electricity. So it's an inherent problem, okay? I know it's late in the day. If you're tracking with me, can you raise your hand? Just like, give me a cheer or something. All right, cool. All right. You guys are awake. This is the best room, awesome. All right, okay. Here we go. If we only knew of something that can solve this problem, because now we don't have to do load following anymore, okay? We could do production following. We could actually build renewable energy for 100% load 100% of the time, and then we can start ramping up and down load. This is flipping the script. This is what it looks like. We're actually going to have houses that run solar, okay? And rather than selling to the electricity grid, you're selling to the hash rate grid. We have 2 grids now. We have a hash rate grid and we have an electricity grid, and they'll balance each other out. We can now actually produce renewables at 100% load 100% of the time, and now we can either sell to the hash rate grid or we can sell to the electricity grid, okay? Now, what's cool about this is long-term credits, okay? If I'm gonna mine against Bitcoin during the day because I'm not using my solar electricity, I can cash in that Bitcoin against the electrical grid 6 months from now. And when there's like no sun or wherever you're at on Earth, this is a global credit now. That's pretty cool. And no one's talking about it. I don't know why. All right. Now, man, you guys are awesome. All right. So check this out. What part of the grid is missing? Distribution and routing. So this is what I do, and this is where I come in, and this is what I'm excited about, is we came up with this idea 3 years ago where we see this issue of centralization in mining. Okay, now we're gonna switch over to Bitcoin, and we're gonna dive really deep in really fast here, because mining is what backs the security of our network. It builds blocks, it processes transactions, and we have an inherent issue with centralization, okay? Because there's 3 things that cause mining to congregate geographically. If you have cheap electricity, if you have a stable infrastructure, and if you have favorable government regulation. Okay, anywhere you have a balance of these 3 things, you're going to have hash power congregating there. Obviously, cheap electricity being the first one people look for, and they quickly realize if there's no stable infrastructure, they're not going to be building their facility. If there's not a favorable government, China, they're not going to be staying there very long, okay? So anywhere on Earth you have these 3 things balanced, you're going to have a congregation of hash rate. And we can't get around that. And we decided maybe we don't have to get around that, because really we don't care where the hash rate's generated, we care who controls it. So this is when we came up with the idea, if we can decouple the creation of hash rate from the control of hash rate, now we can actually put the hash rate on an open hash rate grid for anyone to buy, and now we can actually start controlling it in a decentralized way. So this is what we're working on, is decentralization of control. All right? Now the way we propose to do this is to put a thin layer between the miners and the layer 1 networks. So instead of calling it like a 0.5 network, we just went with layer 0 network. Essentially, it's a routing network. It's a decentralized router for decentralized networks. Okay, how does this look? Essentially, it's a peer-to-peer TCP/IP proxy router that's driven off of smart contracts. It's a very simple design. So essentially, we can put a Titan node, which is a proxy router, inside of each of these at-scale mining facilities. They route their hash rate through the proxy router, which a lot of at-scale facilities already have proxy routers, mining proxies. So it's already being done. Simply, this mining proxy actually takes routing information from smart contracts on a decentralized network. So now you actually have a mining facility that can actually build a second layer network on top of the commodity of hash rate. Now, what did we just blow open here? We just blew open a whole new commodity, right? Before we had electricity, we have an electrical grid, we have electrical options, we have all this stuff, but it's all tied to a very local grid. It's local and finite. Now we're not burning electricity to make Bitcoin, we're translating electricity into hash rate, which is now global and not bound, okay? So we're decentralizing the control. Now what can you do with this? This is really cool. And this is what I geek out about, is because if I had a facility with 50,000 devices in it, and I want to sell the control of 50,000 devices, okay? I want to decentralize the control of my facility. I could sell 50,000 devices, and I can pull each one off the rack, I could put it in a box and ship it around the world. And now I've decentralized the control of 50,000 devices. Or I can bind an NFT to each one of those devices, issue 50,000 NFTs on the Titan network, the Titan protocol. 50,000 people pick up these NFTs. They control that hash rate from anywhere in the world, okay? No longer is owning a hash rate token a passive investment. It's decentralization of control. Whatever hash rate you purchase on a decentralized exchange now, a hash rate token, a cloud mining contract, an NFT, a wrapped crypto product, you actually control that from anywhere in the world through a smart contract. Decentralization of control for decentralized networks. Now, energy producers can now produce electricity at 100% load 100% of the time. Bitcoin solves the renewable energy problem because of fluctuating demand, right? We can build now renewable energy resources at 100% of load. And now we already have miners that are doing this. We already have miners that are in contracts with local power producers that they will actually shut off miners if they need more load on the network. So if there's too much load on the electrical grid, miners will actually shut off their sections of their facility in order to work with the local power producers. This is already being done. Now we're just actually building a protocol on top of it to make it more efficient and actually put market dynamics to it. Titan provides greater accessibility and decentralization to Bitcoin mining as new miners and more power producers come on the grid. So this is the stuff I geek out about. If you guys followed me, if you guys are interested in this, please join us on Telegram at Titan Protocol. Follow us on Twitter, Titan_mining. Read the white paper. Reach out to us at titan.io. Once again, my name is Ryan Condron. Would love to answer any of your questions or just get in really geeky discussions. I love this stuff, so it was great. Thank you for your attention.